Hello, everyone, and welcome to the B2B thematic webinar series. My name is Pradeep Nayak. I'm at the University of Waterloo, and I'm going to be the host and the facilitator of this webinar today. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because we know people are joining us from different parts of the world. So I would start with a few rounds of introductions before we get to the actual talk today. So just to introduce the V2B, or Vulnerability to Viability Global Partnership, which is a transdisciplinary research, knowledge, and action network with over 100 members from Africa, Asia, Canada, and internationally. The goal of the global partnership, that is the V2B Global Partnership, is to support small-scale fisheries in their transition from vulnerability to viability. The way we understand and work on vulnerability and viability is not just in an economic sense, but also to include all aspects of human life that spans the political, the cultural, the environmental, ecological, and cultural and other aspects. Our focus is on a few things here. So the first is we work on co-creating and co-producing knowledge that is effective for engaging in transitions from vulnerability to viability. We also work on creating databases or repositories to hold the information or the data that can be used by all stakeholders. We also engage in developing multifaceted capacity right from the community level to the government and the academia with a specific focus on early career researchers and practitioners. We work on synthesizing the knowledge, the co-produced knowledge, so that it can be used for policy and governance arrangements and mechanisms with reference to small-scale fisheries. We also, in a big way, engage in multi-scalar knowledge mobilization that can help not only articulating, but also realizing the transition from vulnerability to viability. The V2B Global Partnership aims to identify the diverse factors and conditions contributing to the vulnerability of small-scale fisheries and engage collaboratively with small-scale fisher communities and other key civil society, NGOs, government, and university partners to enhance small-scale fisheries visibility and viability. We are conducting transdisciplinary, community-engaged, policy-driven research in 6 countries in Asia that includes Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, Thailand, and 6 countries in Africa that includes Ghana, Malawi, Nigeria, Senegal, South Africa, and Tanzania. In doing so, the V2B Global Partnership brings people and organizations together across physical, cultural, and disciplinary boundaries through a shared interest in addressing global change processes and impacts on small-scale fisheries. The V2B thematic webinar series, for which we have gathered virtually here today, is an initiative of the V2B Global Partnership to facilitate and generate high-level discussions on vulnerability and viability themes and topics within the context of small-scale fisheries. The goal is to feature academics, government representatives, practitioners, and members of the civil society who have made significant contribution to the theoretical, practical, and policy aspects of small-scale fisheries, both locally and also globally. The V2B thematic webinar series takes place on the last Friday of every month. This is a sort of a deviation because of time availability that we are holding it on a Wednesday, and it will continue to be so during the year 2025. The series is available internationally through live streaming on YouTube. Details regarding the monthly webinar series, including speakers, topics, and titles, and links to the webinar platform are available on our website, which is www.b2bglobalpartnership.org. Today's webinar is the 4th in the series of V2B thematic webinars planned for the year 2025 and the 52nd since January 2021 when we started this series. And it is my privilege to introduce Dr. John Kurien as our distinguished speaker today. Dr. John Kurien is a reflective development practitioner, and I hope, John, you would elaborate on that through your talk today. In 1973, he chose to live and work with small-scale fishers in Kerala, India, helping them to form fish marketing cooperatives. And part of the reflective development practitioner comes from that initial work by John. Subsequently, he entered into action research and also worked in many parts of the world with coastal and riparian communities and set up networks for collective action supporting fishers around the world. So the work got expanded, around the world. Dr. Kurien became the Secretary General of the first International Conference of Fishworkers and their supporters in Rome in 1984, and subsequently he founded the International Collective in Support of Fishworkers in 1986. From 1997, he served as Vice Chair of the UN FAO Advisory Committee on Fisheries Research, and that work continued for over a decade. In his roles and associations with FAO, Dr. Kurien has been instrumental in leading major initiatives related to small-scale fisheries, including but not limited to the guidelines on governance of tenure and small-scale fisheries guideline itself. Dr. Kurien retired as professor from the Center of Development Studies in Trivandrum in India, and was a visiting professor at Azim Premji University, Bengaluru, India, for over 10 years, starting during 2013 and 2022. He has made numerous contributions to country-level development of fisheries and the communities that depend on it. For example, Dr. Kurien has been associated with the Cambodia's fishing community or community fisheries, my apologies, initiative since 2025, and he has done some groundbreaking work in Indonesia as well, and both of them will be part of his case studies and presentations today that you will get to hear more. Dr. Kurien has been a strong supporter and advisor to the B2B Global Partnership, and several of our members, including myself, have worked directly with him in the past and at present. It is my honor to invite Dr. John Kurien to deliver today's today's talk for the B2B thematic webinar series, April 2025, and this talk is titled as Envisioning Marine Bioregionalism for Small-Scale Fisheries. Thank you very much, John, for making the time, and we are all eager to listen to your talk. Over to you now.
Thank you very much. That was a very, very long introduction. I think I've lost some time which I could have used for the presentation. Anyway, thank you so much. It is a great honor, privilege, and also a sign of our friendship that I have this occasion to speak to you. I will share my screen. I guess it's visible to all of you. Yeah. So this is the title, Envisioning Marine and Inland Bioregionalism for Small-Scale Fisheries. Let me go straight into the plan of my presentation. What I'll do is give a very brief definition of bioregion and bioregionalism. That will be 3 slides. Then what I'm going to do really is the chunk of my presentation is 2 case studies. These are concrete examples of the effort to either rediscover or revive or create bioregions with which I have closely related. And so that is where the practitioner aspect comes in. And then the fact that I am talking about it and reflecting about it makes the reflective practitioner part. So I will provide the history and relevant geographic details. This is so that you can appreciate the socio-economic and the ecological context. So the bad news is that there are 60 slides. The good news is that 30 of them are photographs for your visual understanding. So we'll go through this quite fast. And finally, just another 4 slides with my concluding remarks or conclusions. I don't want to call them conclusions, but anyway. So here we go. The definition. This is my definition. It's not based on any, of course, it's based on reading a lot of what academicians say and also understanding what how people look at it. So a bioregion is actually a living natural environment with a spatial realm within which human activities co-evolve. But this is based on, I underline, dynamic socio-cultural knowledge, practices, and technologies which foster wise and just use of resources. And the marine inland water bioregion is therefore a particular case of the above, the distinction being that the spatial realm is fluid and fuzzy, unlike the terrestrial realm, which is not so fluid. And bioregionalism is composed of the principles, the values, and the ethics, which yield a certain consciousness. And I would even say a spirituality. So it's not so much a theory, but it's the lived reality arising in a bioregion, as I have described it above. Now, 2 questions will arise. One is, when we talk about bioregions, whether it is marine or terrestrial, what are we talking against? The second question is, does envisioning bioregionalism for small-scale fisheries mean cooking up a new vision, or does the basis for this already exist in many small-scale fisheries? Now, the answer to the first is that what we are talking against is the human-drawn boundaries. And these human-drawn boundaries, they privilege economic and socio-political concerns. As you know, this is the boundaries of the nation state and all the boundaries which come below that in different administrative levels. And these boundaries are actually primarily, this is where state and private property rights prevail. The answer to the second is that most often the basis for bioregionalism or a bioregion actually exists. And what we need to do is to rediscover this and to revive it. And in some cases, maybe there is the possibility to examine the creation of something new. Now, so I will present 2 case studies, one which is about the rediscovery and the revival of bioregions, and another which is about the creation of new bioregions. What happens is that in this process, one is reaffirming community commons and also moving from private property to newly created commons. And I think this is an important concern of the V2V network. So it probably syncs in with your concerns as a network. So I will talk about 2 concrete examples with which I've had long first-hand experience. The first case study is about the revival and the rediscovery and revival of small-scale fisheries. And the place is the Aceh province. And if you look at this map, you will see the Aceh province on the left, and on the right, where it is situated at the tip of the Sumatra island of the Federation of Indonesia. In history, this is important because people of Aceh originally come from different parts of India, and therefore, ethnically, they are different from the Javanese people or the main Javanese community and other communities in Indonesia. So they have a certain affinity to different parts of India where they claim they originally come from. And important about Aceh is that Islam spread in Southeast Asia through Aceh. And Aceh is called the veranda of Mecca. So all the places where you have Islam in Southeast Asia, they owe their origins to what happened in Aceh and the propagation of Islam from Aceh. Now, right in the 15th century, there was a very strong sultanate in Aceh. And much of what is Malaysia now, used to come under that sultanate. And Aceh in the pre-colonial days, the only country which did not come under colonial rule. And actually, even in the early 20th century, Aceh had its own ambassador in the US and in Turkey. Now, the Sultan of Aceh, he divided his kingdom, at least the part which is now Aceh, into 3 socio-ecological domains. Now, what is marked in red is the forest domain. And what is between the red and the yellow is the agrarian midland. And what is between the yellow and the coast is the coastal socio-ecological domain. And he appointed commanders, and they are called Panglima, in every village of each of the domains. So it's very interesting that in every village you have a Panglima, a commander who commands. And of course, we are talking about 16th century. And in the coast, you have the commander of the sea. The word in Achenese and in Bahasa Indonesia is laut or sea. So in Aceh, this was basically a coastal defense force to protect Aceh. And its members were fishers. And the leader was called the Panglima Laut, the captain of the sea. But after the colonial period and when Indonesia became a nation state federation, 1945, this customary coastal defense force became a customary fishermen's organization. But it continued to be referred to as the commander of the sea, the Panglima Laut. And actually today, it's probably the richest fisher organization in the developing world because, they have a socio-economic fund. It's a kind of welfare fund, which is about $4 million US. And they got this by capturing and auctioning boats which fished illegally in the Achenese waters. Now, some of you probably know the history. For 30 years, Aceh province was in an armed conflict with the central government of Indonesia. And during these 30 years, there was, a lot of strife within the province, and the province was isolated. And it was these commanders in the different realms who maintained that sense of community. So on the coast, it was the Panglima Laut which helped to retain that sense of community. So every coastal village is a socio-ecological unit with a distinct land and sea territory, which I call the coastal area ecosystem. So it is a horizontally linked bioregion governed by customary law, which is called the Hukum Adat Laut. Hukum is law, Adat is customary, and Laut is sea. So it is the customary law of the sea. And in Aceh, along the east and west coast together, there are 179 of these customary organizations. So a good visual representation of this marine bioregional network which existed is like this necklace of beads. Each village unit is a distinct bead, but they are different. They are marked by diversity because each coastal village has its very specific social and ecological characteristics. But what is it that unites all this horizontal linkage of bioregions? it is the string. And the string is really the principle, the values, the ethic contained in the Hukumadat Laut. So what happens? The tsunami strikes in 2004 and everything changes in Aceh. So there's loss, 1,000, this is the official count. In 20 minutes, you lose 130,000 people. A lot of these Panglima Louts leaders, they die in their effort to save other people. And a lot of, with them goes this precious unwritten custom, which is lost. Because customary law is not written. So you have this situation. So the province then got autonomy, because I will not get into the details, but I consider this as a gift of the tsunami. So the autonomy, it implied full control over the natural resources, and fish was one of them. And the new provincial government wanted a new approach to fisheries management, building on the customary bioregions. So they suggested requested whether the UN FAO would come and help. And that is how I got involved in this. So what happens if you want co-management? Earlier, the management was exclusively with the Panglima Laut. Now, co-management requires the involvement of more stakeholders. And the Panglima Laut was a good foundation, but this required larger coastal community of women and youth to also be involved. And of course, co-management implied that the state had to be involved. So government staff also had to be involved, but they had to, change their mindset and their roles. So to start off with, the Panglima Laut has to have a new role. And it is not enough to have just that horizontal village network. The network needed to be nested and coordinated across the coast. So that was done. The local governments were involved in this process. And then the bioregions, the customary bioregions, had to be renegotiated in modern law as new coastal bioregional commons. And the role of custom had to be specified. So a new fishery law was created, and this was done by this apex body of the Panglima Laut taking the lead, and it was a very bottom-up consultation process which led to the new law. And in the law, it provided for the fact that some of the important governance processes which were part of the customary law, importantly, for example, conflict resolution, was retained in the law, and co-management was given its rightful place. So we actually created a sort of popular Bollywood-style movie to spread this message. So that had to be done, because you can't write down the customary law, because then it ceases to be customary. So this was the innovative way in which we propagated this whole idea of the law. And there you see me with the lead actress of that movie, because I was the producer. So then we got the youth from the villages involved. So, many youth had become orphans, and we chose a cadre of community motivators, one from each village mostly, and we had to train them. They had a residential training program, a 3-week residential training program, and we had about 7 batches of them. So totally about 180 people, the youngsters like this, were trained in understanding community development and co-management, and how to take care of the coastal bioregion. The government staff also had to be retrained. So formal programs, field visits to different countries, and all the rest of it. And the government policy of decentralization helped this very much. And finally, what we were able to do in the matter of 4 years was to create, 5 co-management centers as examples, which could then be extended. These were recognized by the state. The state, put up a lot of signages on the road to say that, here you have a local government recognized bioregion. And these new commons had to be mapped and legalized. So a lot of participatory mapping was undertaken. Then much of the commons had been destroyed by the tsunami. So this had to be rejuvenated. So, many of the youth whom we had trained got involved in this rejuvenation process. And this rejuvenation process resulted in hugely unexpected results in terms of reviving the coastal biomass. Also, destructive technologies which were introduced during the aid program of the tsunami, that had to be stopped. So, a lot of mass action was taken, symbolic burning of the mini trawls and things like that was done. The role of women was enhanced greatly. And so, everybody was working together to create a new consciousness about these new bioregions. And, Aceh province is very scenic. So, there are a lot of these bays. So, every bay almost became a new bioregion. And it is that linkage which became important, that string of things. So in Aceh, what we see is, how strong customary coastal bioregion, which suffered as a result of the tsunami, was rebuilt and extended to become more inclusive. So that was the important thing. And that we were able to better map the place, extend it, and rejuvenate the resource, and utilize the collective efforts of this new community. So the key message from Aceh, Indonesia, is that a customary marine bioregional commons of small-scale fishers can be renegotiated and rebuilt from below in a new form. So this is the main message from Aceh. Let me quickly go on to the second example. Here, this is a case of creating new bioregions for small-scale fisheries. And this example is from Cambodia. Cambodia has a lake called the Tonle Sap. It is called the heart of Cambodia because everything in Cambodia revolves around this lake. So the lake, as it is a big bioregion. And the important thing about this lake is that during the dry season, it's about 2,500 square kilometers. And in the rainy season, it expands about 8-fold. So, and the tidal amplitude is about 8 meters. So you can imagine, if you try to visualize 8 meters, 24, 25 feet of variation in the water, you will see the pictures. So in March, April, this is the size of the Tonle Sap. In June, July, it expands. Let me show you that again. It expands. And by November, it's so huge. So this is what I mean by saying that the lake expands. And, Cambodia was colonized by the French. And what you see here is that along the in the lake, you had floating villages, and they occupied the fringes of the bioregion. Now you have floating villages. Everything is floating. The market, the dentist, the school, the dispensary, everything is floating, including your own house. And you see, if you go back, what you see there are houses during November. But in March, this is how it would look. The level would go down. So you have to have houses on stilts because of the tidal amplitude. So the bioregion was so rich in fish that when the French got to Cambodia, they saw this as a major source of revenue for their colonial exploits. So you see fish everywhere. I mean, there is so much fish in this lake, and big fish, small fish, more fish everywhere. It's just fish, teeming with fish. But what the French did was to privatize this bioregion. They auctioned off parts of this lake to rich individuals who are mostly Chinese in the early 19th century. And they called these as fishing lots. So they were actually bamboo enclosures of aquatic space in the lake, which was then auctioned out to individuals. But this became their legal private property. They had records for that, but they had to remit the royalty to the French government. So this system actually continued even after Cambodia got independence in 1953. Then I am sure you have, at least some of you have heard about this person called Pol Pot. He, during the Vietnam War, he took control. He is a Cambodian who took control of Cambodia in 1975. He killed about 2 million Cambodians, and he killed most of the fishers around the Tonle Sap Lake. So the lake became a lake without people, just fish. And he brought people as individuals from different parts of Cambodia and settled them in labor camps around the lake. His main purpose was to institute a sort of primitive communism in which he wanted to destroy the very institution of family and community. Everybody was equal, he said, and he was the big brother who would look after them. So there was only rice cultivation and this harvesting of fish, very little else. So family and community was demolished. So what was left is just individuals. But fortunately, Pol Pot's rule ended in 1978. But the whole population was just a group of individual peasants scattered all over the country, particularly around the Tonle Sap, which is, as you know, one of the world's most, or probably the world's most productive inland water ecosystem. But at this time, the Chinese left, but the military who was involved in the process of, getting rid of Pol Pot, the generals took over the lake and they revived the old lot system. But then in 1998, the UN had its first monitored election in Cambodia. And as a result of this election, this gentleman called Hun Sen, he became the prime minister. And what did he do? In 2000, when he became prime minister, he took away the private rights of the fishing lots. And he ordered that the rights be given to riparian communities who could now recreate small bioregions so that they can use the resource, that is the fish and the flooded land, for their livelihood. And in a sense, what he instituted by that law was, as I consider, Asia's first top-down aquarian reforms. We know about agrarian reforms, but this is an aquarian reform where he created community-controlled small-scale inland fisheries. So that's how this system was. So you have really the creation of bioregions and community from above. So you see, there was a fisheries department, and they started a community fisheries development office within the department. This new legislation was passed, and this legislation is a very high order legislation. It's called in Cambodia, it's called a sub-decree, which is just below the royal decree, which is the highest form of law. So a sub-decree cannot be changed without something like 3/4 of the members of the parliament passing it, or changing it. And the UN FAO was invited to help in the creation of these community bioregion fishery institutions. And that's how I got involved. So you see, people were as individuals. So while they were given these rights, there is the fear of freedom. So the riparian village people they did not ask for this reform. So they were afraid to take over these new regions which were handed to them on a platter by the prime minister. And this long history of genocide and warfare and so on, made everybody suspicious of any measure which came out of the ordinary. And in any case, people who were staying together, they did not really know each other because they all came from different places. They were just brought together and dumped in these places by Pol Pot. So everyone was suspicious of the other one, and they were afraid of powerful people. So there is no sense of community. So to begin with, there is no sense of community. And as I said right at the beginning, you can't have a bioregion without a sense of community. So no one trusted the other. So when a group who live in the same socio-ecological space, when they have no sense of history or shared identity or any mutual interest, then it's very hard to create community out of these individuals, because fundamentally there is no trust. But the only way you can do this is to create trust, and that is for the individuals to work together. So when you work together, you get to know each other and you gradually create trust. So this is what we tried to do. So we tried to recreate this sense of community and the bioregions. So the new law required people, with the assistance of the department, to identify and demarcate the area which they considered to be theirs. And thus, there was a recreation of new individual community bioregions. And they had to map it, and these maps had to be legally endorsed. So it's a kind of, mapping as a form of creating sovereignty over resources. And these areas then became community bioregional commons. So this kind of participatory, collective participation is the only way you can build trust. And to do this, we also used, the technology that was available in the early part of this century, orthophoto maps. And this was a great way of building a sense of ownership, because you projected the map onto the wall. Most often the meetings were held in the pagoda. They are all Buddhist. And the orthophoto map, which is a kind of a high resolution map taken by aircraft flying at low levels, you can actually see everything on the map. And when it's projected, you can actually see the tree, the pagoda, and so on and so forth. So people could actually sit in their home, in their where they were gathering, and then decide what could be the boundaries of these new local bioregional commons of their. So they sat together, and they also then made the conservation and management plans. And in this way, a huge sense of trust and community was formed. So you see, because they had this sense of ownership, then these new bioregions were used exclusively for livelihood. I mean, you couldn't, start a profitable business individually. Everything was collective. And therefore, the rules were developed as to what kind of fishing equipment would be used, when could the flooded forest be used, and there were sanctions for illegal use of things. And sanctions were mainly, social sanctions, which were dreaded by people. So more than economic and other sanctions, social sanctions were not considered to be something which you wanted to foist on yourself. So that helped people to go by the rules. And the institution, by law, had to have a democratically elected managing committee, and 1/3 had to be women. So this top-down approach combined with this bottom-up, process of trust building, helped very much. And you found that these committees, although they were new, and as I said, there was suspicion about people, but gradually you found in many places they took off very well. So very slow start, but very impressive progress. And I have continuously evaluated these initiatives. And after 15 years, in 2015, there were about 500 such local bioregions were formed around the Tonle Sap Lake. Half of them, I can vouch, were in a situation where they helped to really improve the socioeconomic condition of the riparian communities, and very significantly at that. And also, the creation of the community bioregional commons, much to the surprise of the fishery scientists of Cambodia, they said that when you do this, the fish production will fall, because when people don't work together, people cannot work together. So the fishing lot system was actually better, because it's private and there's more motivation to catch the fish and sell the fish and so on. But actually, fish production did not come down as a result of this creation of new bioregional commons. And in fact, only eco-friendly fishing gears could be used. And in spite of that, fish production did not come down, and the fish catch was now more fairly distributed. And a certain ethic of conservation, became almost like second nature to all the communities. Every community wanted to have its area for conservation of the resources of their small bioregion. So here again, I bring this necklace. You see, each community unit is a distinct bead. They are marked by diversity. Each has its specific characteristics. And what is the string? In Aceh, it was the customary law. And here it is the community fisheries law, which is based on principles of cooperation, democratic participation, and the exclusive use of eco-friendly technologies to foster livelihood. So you see, in Cambodia, what we see is a huge bioregion, which is the lake, which was demarcated into private property by the French. And you saw what happened with Pol Pot. There was this terrible genocide, which destroyed, the institution of family and community, and it destroyed the most important ingredient in creating community, namely trust. So, but what do we observe? This radical top-down agrarian reform implemented by the nation state appropriated the private property and gave it back to the individuals and helped them to create this newfound community bioregional commons. So the message from Cambodia is that community bioregional commons can be created for small-scale fisheries with committed support from above and dedicated facilitation from below. My concluding thoughts from these narratives, what I've provided, these two examples, which I know these examples well because I've worked in these places for several years. So two important facts. The concept of bioregions is not a new one. There is a lot of discussion about bioregionalism these days, and it would almost seem as though some academics and others have found this new concept, and they are in a position to explain all this to us. But bioregions are not new. And the second thing is that bioregions can be recreated. So you see, actually, indigenous communities world over, and I'm sure some of you who are watching this, who are from different parts of the world, know this, that indigenous communities, they have always lived bioregionally and in bioregionally conscious ways, long before this term entered the academic discourse. So theirs was not bioregionalism as theory, but as lived practice. And it's only, and this was the case until colonialism. It is colonialism which imposed artificial boundaries and borders and broke down bioregionalism as was understood by these communities. And this term, I think, was coined in the 70s by Raymond Dasman. And you see, isn't the irony very stark? Nation states, they fractured bioregions, and the academia, quote unquote, discovered what indigenous cultures never forgot. So when we try to recreate bioregions, what we must remember is that what we are really trying to do is to restore the wisdom of numerous indigenous ecosystem communities who are scattered all over the world. If you want to avoid repackaging colonialism, this is the only way you can do it. We have to recognize that this knowledge of what a bioregion is and the spirit and the tenets of bioregionalism are very central to ecosystem communities. And by the way, I assume that most of you would know what ecosystem communities are. This is a term which was used by Raymond Dasman. He divided the world into two: ecosystem communities and biosphere communities. So you and I, who are me speaking and you listening, we belong to the biosphere community group because we depend on the whole biosphere. But there are so many communities, probably even today, they form the largest majority of the population of the world who produce our food and other services. They are ecosystem communities because they depend completely on an ecosystem for their livelihoods. So this is what I say. And in the case of small-scale fisheries, you take Latin America. I mean, the Amazon is full of bioregions of small-scale fishers. Africa, there was, before all the nation states came up, you take West Africa, for example, you have this whole phenomenon of fishers going all over the place, fishing, navigating. They have special names for places, and they govern the sea based on ecological and cultural boundaries, not the political lines. So you see, for millennia, small-scale fisheries have been doing this, but the world created these arbitrary lines of nation states. But then, the living boundaries, which are etched by water, fish, and songs, and the whispers of ancestors, this is what the communities held dear. So we need to remind ourselves that colonialism didn't just redraw maps, it desacralized space. And bioregions, they're not just ecological zones, they are sacred geographies where every sea, river, coast, flooded forest, or whatever is woven into a cosmic order. And the aquatic realm is not owned. You commune with it. And, it's not police and courts, but there are spiritual covenants which sustain the life for generations. So bioregionalism is not a romantic notion. It is the oldest and most effective system of ecological governance which has ever been devised by ecosystem communities. And its power lies, in my understanding, in its spirituality. The understanding that nature is not a resource, but a web of reciprocal relationships which we breach only at our peril. And I think we are increasingly coming to be aware of this. And I guess most of you are academics or researchers. So let me end with this quote from Peter Berg, who is one of the main spokesmen of bioregions. He says, a bioregion can be determined initially by nature. The final boundaries are best described by the people who live within it. So there is the people element. And this life on the planet is interconnected. And so there is a certain resonance which develops among living things and the factors which influence them. So These are the interactions. So if we are talking about bioregions, basically we are talking about discovering and describing that resonance as a way to describe the bioregion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. Really two great stories, and lots of good examples to learn from on this the idea of bioregionalism and its relevance to small-scale fisheries viability and sustainability. So we would now open this up for questions from the audience. Takes a little bit of time to receive them, and as we do, I'm going to read the questions to you, and then if you would like to respond to that. The first one that I have received is from Ron Johns. Hi, Ron. Um, Good to see John again. How are these bioregions distinguished from earlier concepts such as LMEs, large marine, ecoregions? That's what Ron is asking.
Do I answer one by one?
Yeah, I've not received a
Okay.
whole lot
Okay.
of
Okay.
those. If I receive a lot, then I will read out one
Okay.
or
Okay.
two at a time.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. I can't see you, but thanks for joining. We've had a lot of discussions in Cambodia with Ron. So, of course, the large marine ecosystem, by the very name, is a very large bioregion, marine bioregion. So, we can't go straight into that. And I think the problem of this LME program, which was undertaken with a lot of fanfare, is that you start with the largest boundary and then try to come down. But that doesn't work. So we are thinking about the local bioregion, and you know it well, or the meso level. The meso level. Can you hear me? It's raining very heavily here. the meso level. So that is really the distinction which I would draw. And for creating the local and the meso level, you need a different approach. It's a much more sociological approach. It's not an administrative scientific approach, which is the priority. It is an approach which, as I said in the end, it is about the resonance between nature and people and the creation of that interaction, which is important.
Yeah, LMEs are really large. They're 200,000 square kilometer in size, at least. And that gives the kind of, the distinction in terms of the scale, at which these two LMEs and bioregions could work. I looks like, John needs to close a few windows, it's raining heavily there,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
but
heavy rain.
rains are, are welcome, in the heat that
Most
you are going
welcome.
through now,
It was so hot today.
yeah,
Yes.
so hot,
Okay.
so rains are always good, yeah. So I was going to ask you, I mean, the way you explain bioregionalism, um, it it's a unit of area that many literature would also define it as a social ecological unit within which people and nature interactions take place. So is there a consideration of similar ideas about social ecological systems or units that nurtures interactions between human and in an environment within the bioregional definitions that you have elaborated on.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part. What?
So is there a similarity in terms of the social ecological systems, approach and the bioregionalism that you were talking about? Because these are units of areas within which human and environment interactions, at varying levels, take place.
Yes. Yes. You see, I mean, when you talk about socio and ecological, whatever you call it, it's finally about nature and people. So if you think of a context without people, nature alone, nature defines its boundaries. But the moment people interact, then, they also recreate these boundaries. And it is in that process of recreation which is left free from socio-political interference in the form of administrative boundaries and so on and so forth, which we are talking about.
Okay.
So, I mean, we see this problem. Because of administrative boundaries, there is so much problem of coordination of, say, resource management, especially for a fluid resource like fish, a fugitive resource in a fluid milieu. If you have very strict administrative boundaries, you can't have meaningful management of the resource. So, in a sense, one has to, of course, we cannot do away with the administrative boundaries or national boundaries. That was, to be idealistic. But whether there is a possibility to build larger bioregions within, administrative boundaries and allow for more cooperation across administrative boundaries where a bioregion spreads, I mean, you take the case of the problem between Sri Lanka and India. And there are so many other places where you have this contested space. But basically, it is one bioregion. So there must be some possibility to accept that and for two nations to sit together and then say, look, this is in the interest of both our countries. So let's re-examine this. And for this, in the particular case of India, Sri Lanka, we have to go back in history. It calls for going back to old notions of these two fishing communities. Huh?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there must be lots of other examples in the world.
Yeah.
I don't know enough of them, but
yeah. I mean, there is a lot of work in terms of transboundary, fisheries
Yes.
management, which is, how do you work across these boundaries because they are one bioregion, So
Yes.
some of our work is in the Sundarbans, which is again between two
Exactly.
countries.
Yes. Yes.
So how do you manage that ecological unit,
Yes. Yes.
with human interactions rather than
Yes.
having this artificial administrative boundary? So I have
Yes.
one more question from Ajit Raj. And Ajit's message is, Hi, John sir. My question is about how the community who came from different historic space and time experience find a common purpose post the law in Cambodia because they were resettled in that area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Ajit. Ajit is a friend and now in Canada. He was in Azim Premji University. Yes, I mean, it has happened. Let me start like that. In Cambodia, this process of creating community has indeed happened. And if you compare the experience of people in Cambodia who were, displaced during the Pol Pot regime, who were far away from aquatic resources, and compare those who were near the aquatic resources. In other words, those who were under this new legislation as compared to those who were away from it, the sense of community in the riparian communities is much stronger. And this is a result of this process of creating both the bottom-up process of building trust, having democratic decision-making, and so on and so forth. It's not perfect, certainly not. And I mean, I don't want to get into details. As of today, I am a little disappointed at what's happening in Cambodia. Yes. But this has to do with the reflection of the larger political process. The man who created this very radical reform has become a dictator by himself. So things change, but that foundation which was built, I hope, will stay and create some kind of countervailing, social force in the event of trying to reestablish private property again on the lake.
Yeah, I mean, and again, so that raises the question about, one is, you talked about creating new bioregions and then rediscovering, you know, some of the lost, bioregions. But at the
Yeah.
same time, one of the key challenges, as seems from your discussion, some of the Ron's questions as well, is, how to sustain these bioregions, even if you recreate them or rediscover them, the continuity of those within the given political and other kinds of dynamics is a big challenge, because they can come and go depending on who is the leader. They can come and go given other natural factors like tsunami or not, so the big challenge is not only the policy, atmosphere, but also what other factors can be facilitated to help continue these bioregions once they are created, especially as commons, and I know I will just read out a few comments that Ron is making. I don't think this is a question which really resonate, what you were just saying, your experience of, what is now happening in Cambodia. He says, unfortunately, as we speak, many of these ideas and factors John has described between 2000 and 2015 are being eroded in the new fishery law and the supporting national policy document called the SPF. He also says, in Cambodia, we have the new policy of MAC, Modern Agricultural Cooperative, community, 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 dip, community and dependiar or directory or something. What language one uses? The Mac has now when the Mac can the Mac how the Mac how can agriculture co-ops be tailored to Cambodian fisheries? I think the Macs are reformulated in a way to see how agricultural co-ops can also be designed or tailored to Cambodian fisheries. So intersectoral kind of, yeah. So he is making a few comments, which really resonates and speaks to some of the concerns that yeah, things change, and so new. So then the question is, John, nothing is static. As you look at small scale fisheries and fisheries management and governance, uh, we are operating and floating these new ideas within a very dynamic, context. Uh, how to make our approaches also dynamic, equally dynamic, so that they can sustain the challenges that is waiting in the future. Uh, and then the direct question is then, is there enough dynamism in the bioregional approach that you are talking about that can sustain the challenges not in the current time but also in the future?
Well, I mean, I got involved in this bioregion discussion only about a year or two ago. But when I got to hear more about it, first of all, I realized that everything is terrestrial oriented. Everybody is talking about bioregion in the terrestrial.
Yeah.
So we proposed that we need to speak about the realm which is 70% of the planet also.
Yeah.
So we actually wrote up something called what was it? Netting, webbing a new net, something like that. Yeah, it's available on the internet, and we are seeing that the inevitability of destruction of resources is creating some kind of groundswell, at least in the terrestrial spaces, for, in a sense, asking for regions which cut across small administrative boundaries. So I feel this is the kind of thirst for the bioregion, although it's not articulated like that. And that's why I said very cynically that, academics suddenly discover this bioregion, which actually communities were practicing. They were not preaching about it. They were practicing about it. So that practice has got smothered because of all that has happened in the post-colonial period and with the creation of the nation state. So if we are finding that, even nation states are now having a problem of maintaining their boundaries, then this thinking, I think, needs to be fostered. This is not going to create a revolution, and it's unlikely to be something which will replace the nation state and things like that. I mean, we talk about South Asia, for example. I mean, South Asian bioregion, it's good to have a vision like that, but the reality is more complex. But perhaps there are other places, in the world where bioregions of, say, a group of islands in Indonesia, for example. I'm just talking off the top of my head. It's possible that they can form, because again, in Indonesia, in the constitution, custom is given a lot of priority. It is a constitutional right. So going back to custom is actually going back to the way in which people related to nature as they saw it in lived practice. So it is possible in a certain context that it is there is a greater probability of this happening than, say, in some other context.
And do you see these bioregions exclusive to, either terrestrial or aquatic? Can there be terrestrial aquatic bioregions? For example, coastal lagoons, they thrive or die, depending on the catchment, so there is a connection between the terrestrial and the aquatic systems, and therefore, one could argue that bioregions could be redefined in a way that is not specific to aquatic or or terrestrial. They can combine both. Have you thought?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not making a case for marine and aquarian versus terrestrial. No, not at all. Because you see, even in the customary context in Aceh, it is a land and water space. And in some places, there is a river flowing. In some of the villages, there is a river. So it changes the whole geographical and the geomorphological context is changed. So we, at least in now, for example, the lake where you have been working, Chilika, is a good example where, of course, you cannot think of it only as the water body. It is integral. The land is integral. Or even in Cambodia, the lake and the flooded forest. But the thing is, the situation is so dynamic, ecologically dynamic, that you can't lay boundaries. Because by the time you put a land boundary, it is water takes over at a particular time in the year. So what was solid suddenly becomes fluid, and what was fluid suddenly becomes solid. So it is a difficult proposition. But all the same, it's important to give priority to nature processes and our understanding of how nature processes have been artificially blocked as a result of nation-state boundaries or other things like that. I mean, all the discussion about dams, the Mekong, the damming of the Mekong. I mean, you do something in China, it affects something in Laos and Vietnam, or China and Bangladesh and India. So it really calls for an appreciation of trying to see how nature works and how we can best accommodate that within the framework of our nation-state boundaries, which are unlikely to change in the near future.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's really great. I think, we are almost at time, but I will ask you a last question, so, uh, I mean, this is a really innovative, idea, and of course, not so new because it has been already implemented in different parts of the world. Uh, to my selfish interest, of representing the vulnerability to viability global partnership, how do you see that this notion of bioregionalism has, can either in real or potentially contribute to sustainable and viable small scale fisheries? What are some of the key tenets that can help really articulate the viability aspect of small scale fisheries? What is the added advantage? How does it help?
Well, I mean, you see, uh, again, if you look at the example of Cambodia, uh, historically, it must have been a place where, because of the huge resources that small scale fishing operations must have been extremely viable. But with the course of history, it has become hugely vulnerable, the communities and the resource. So this change that was brought about as a result of this law immediately helped to, to address this vulnerability and create a more viable community. But to achieve that is a huge sociological process, building the trust and so on and so forth. Now, for example, if you take a situation where, as a result of colonial or nation state development policies, you have brought in wrong technologies. And this is ruining the resource, whether it is terrestrial or marine, it doesn't matter. If you go by the marine example, now trawling, for example. So because of the introduction of trawling, it has, on the one hand, created huge vulnerability to many communities. And we see in Kerala, for example, there are several examples where fisher communities along coast are going back. They are getting away from these highly so-called efficient technologies because they are hugely cost intensive and they will ruin you. And they are going back to technologies which make for greater viability. So linked to that is the concept that we need to fish within the constraints that nature provides. So, that is another example where technology change as a result of moving from just administrative boundaries to bioregional boundaries can create a situation where one moves from vulnerability to viability.
Thank you very much. I think we are at time.
Yeah.
This was great. I mean, really a wonderful, two wonderful examples of, bioregionalism and its connection to what we are doing within the network itself, looking at the vulnerabilities and also how communities can transition towards viability, and there's a lot to learn from this. I know that these discussions will continue, and many of the questions from the audience, has opened up new directions to think, about bioregionalism as a new way of, creating commons. And the relationships between human beings and the nature itself. The videos will be on the YouTube, so there is a lot of people that come back and watch it and then leave questions, which will pass it on to you. But our interest is that now is the starting point of this discussion and debate on this new concept and its applicability, not only to sustainable fisheries, but also you know uh, what we're doing within the network in many parts of the world. So thank you very much, John.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course, this is
I
not
will.
the end. We continue this discussion.
Sure, sure.
Also, thank you to the audience.
Right.
For the
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And have a good day, all of you.
Okay.
And
Yeah. And then, our next talk would be on the last Friday of next month in May. So we look forward to seeing you all
okay.
again. Thank you very much once
Bye.
again.
Thank you.